What rough beast its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born?
Hello and welcome to What Rough Beast. I'm Virginia Heffernan, still in the glow of the Mamdani win. It just suggests that there is something that might be built from the freaking rubble and that thing might be exciting and have a future. It gives us a future back to have a 33-year-old win an election in New York City over the Democratic machine, the centrist machine. And over the hedge fund money Bill Ackman gave to his campaign. And now I hear this crazy news that some finance types in Manhattan are getting together with Eric Adams. Yes, Eric Adams, to strategize about how to beat Mamdani in November. And that is incredible to me because obviously he's completely corrupt, but it also suggests they are just terrified of Mamdani. Like, we have leftist mayors in New York City. We have a tradition of them. We had Bill de Blasio, whatever you think of him, who is making some of the same promises about childcare and pre-K. We had Ed Koch. Finance, sector, Wall Street has always had to live with a lefty thread in New York City life and has had to understand that we live so closely and so densely with each other that we end up paying each other's taxes, paying taxes to support each other. But for some reason, they're acting like they are libertarians and they don't want to carry their neighbors, literally people who live up and downstairs from them. Well, downstairs since they're all in penthouses. Anyway, I am so excited to talk to our guest, David Rees. So I was gonna say, if you don't know who David Rees is, like, there's no hope for you, but I would only say that to people my age because it is possible that you all don't know this guy and you don't know Get Your War On or My Fighting Technique is Unstoppable, all the cartoons that put David Rees on the map, especially at the beginning of the so-called War on Terror. He is a humorist and cultural critic. He has had a TV series, Going Deep with David Rees. He has a podcast that is amazing called Election Profit Makers. I missed it in 2016 when it started, but he has it again with an old childhood friend of his. It's about election related prediction markets. So all that predict it kind of stuff, poly market kind of stuff where people are betting on what's going to happen in elections and trying to make money, potentially terrible news for the rest of us. Election Profit Makers with Profit. Please listen to it. And please listen to the interview because we are going to talk about whether Get Your War On, which I have 2 copies of, Get Your War On, his early millennium book and cartoon, is relevant to today's conversation about whether we should, continue to bomb Iran or what we're doing in the Middle East, ensuring in the Middle East. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him. Thanks for listening to What Rough Beast. Hello, David, and welcome to What Rough Beast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So the show's idea is that we, saw the demolition of all that is holy or American starting in 2016 and, continuing to this very day. And we wanted to just admit that that's happening, not give a lot of false hope. And then also just maybe try to imagine what we could start to build from the dust around us. And you're the perfect person to talk to. And here's why I wanted to have you on the show. About the dust, about the honesty.
Okay, yeah. I can talk about the dust. I can't talk about the rebuilding.
Yeah. Well, right. Rebuilding sounds a little too hopeful. It's more like
I'm all about the widening gyre. I don't.
Oh yeah.
I'm not qualified to talk about rebuilding. Let Mamdani handle that.
YAF was the first text to Stephen that started this happening.
Oh, really? Is it gyre? I thought it was gyre. Is it gyre?
I don't know. Sense. It could be a GIF.
Right, yeah.
Gyroscope. Don't you say a gyroscope?
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that. Yeah, you're right. Gyre. Yep.
So 2 things to tell you. One is I didn't have my copy of Get Your War On. I didn't think I had it. And then my 19-year-old son was like, you don't have yours? Here's mine.
Whoa, wow.
And then I went back to try to look around and see if I had mine because I wanted mine because it had so much of my chi on it from those days. You know, I had read it so many times, and then I found this one.
Oh,
so
wow. You have two copies. You might be the only person in America who has 2 copies of that book. I don't even have 2 copies.
I am just like a huge, well, obviously, we're all crazy fans of this. I mean, everyone who isn't should be. But the reason that I wanted to have you is that someone tweeted on Blue Sky that they said they were way too young to remember the Iraq War. Were the arguments for the Iraq War as dumb as the arguments for bombing Iran? And I posted a couple of panels and said, here's a good sample of what the argument looked like for the war in Iraq.
Oh, right. Yeah. A couple of friends sent me that stuff when it started going around last week about.
Oh, yeah.
The vibes, I guess you would say.
The vibes. And really, I think I was the first to post it because I wanted to help out this kid. And it was before Trump joined in. It was when he was just like, you know, Tehran should clear out, or maybe I'll do this.
Right.
Who's gonna be the, you know. So, okay. What do you think is the argument as dumb as the arguments around getting into the war in Iraq?
The way I think about all that stuff, because, you know, it's like coming up on 25 years ago. When I started that cartoon, I started it when we started bombing Afghanistan, Operation Enduring Freedom. I started the cartoon a couple days after they launched Operation Enduring Freedom, which was October of 2001. The cartoon initially obviously was not about Iraq. It was about the idea that George W. Bush was going to lead the country into a never-ending war on terror. And that campaign, that military campaign, it was like a month after 9/11. You know, it was like very immediate, very raw, and that had almost universal public support.
This was when we were just going to get Osama bin Laden in Tora Bora, where he was hiding.
Yeah, and run Al-Qaeda out of Afghanistan, and then go into Afghanistan and drive out the Taliban, and then make it a feminist haven for women and education and all the, you know, they were just throwing arguments against the wall like spaghetti. So so the cartoon started back then because I thought the war on terror was a dumb idea, and if we were going to have a war on terror, George W. Bush was a bad person to lead it, and I didn't trust a lot of their rhetoric, you know. And then it was really those early cartoons were a lot about like cluster munitions and stuff, which I got, you know, I started to develop a kind of ghoulish interest in cluster munitions and landmines and dropping food aid packages into Afghanistan at the same time we're dropping cluster bombs into Afghanistan.
Yep.
And then over the course of the next year, as it became very clear, like, oh, and now they're going to parlay this into a war in Iraq because they've always wanted to do that, right? Like, I feel like such an old boomer talking about like the Project for the New American Century and Paul Wolfowitz and stuff like that. But that became very clear. And by the time of the Iraq War, I mean, they did a very successful propaganda, you know, justifying this pending invasion and how they were going to democratize Iraq, just as they had in some alternate universe democratized Afghanistan and made Afghanistan a wonderful place. They were going to do the same for Iraq. And but by that point, there were big Iraq war protests in the spring of 2003. That was not as universally supported as the war in Afghanistan.
Right.
But the discourse was extremely stupid. And I thought, again, I think a lot of the discourse post 9/11 was extremely stupid. Even the Afghanistan stuff, which a lot of people consider a more justified military intervention than Iraq. You know, there was still a lot of stupid bullshit flying around. So having said all that, I would say that there's obviously a lot of wonderfully poignant parallels between the 2003 decision to invade Iraq and Trump's 2025 decision to bomb some Iranian nuclear facilities. The contexts are kind of different, even though they're both existing in the Middle East, which has its own sort of, I don't know what you would call it, historical context that is ever developing and churning and frustrating people.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Trump can get away with launching a land invasion of Iran the way we did in Iraq. Like, that's not going to happen for a million reasons. Yeah. And I think the biggest reason is that Trump is extremely lazy and also extremely desperate to be seen as a winner. So he just wants to do whatever is the easiest thing that he can brag about on social media for a week before everybody forgets, because now he's done something else. I think Bush was a terrible president, and as of this point in history, knock wood, has led to many more deaths than Trump ever will.
I'm glad you point that out. I've heard you say that on your podcast. That's important. I mean, now just the body count is a good thing to keep your eye on, unless you lay every single COVID death at the feet of Donald Trump.
Right. I mean, these types of like calculations are like kind of gruesome and crazy to do when you think about like, well, who killed more people? Who's responsible for more deaths? But Bush was a horrible president, stipulated. he was a different type of person than Trump. And I think their difference in personalities, at least in part, guarantees that the wars, whether real or potential, will be very different.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like,
Yeah. I mean,
Trump doesn't want to go to an Air Force base and look at coffins draped in flags and stuff like he you know, and he doesn't want to have to explain tough decisions or something. He wants to be like, yeah, we destroyed these nuclear facilities, like, and now I declare a ceasefire. Everybody better do it. You know, it's like he doesn't have what it takes to really get us into like an intractable multi-decade military operation. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
maybe to his credit, I don't know, but I think so.
You probably saw Mike Huckabee was trying to bring back some of the holy war language that George Bush had, but you're either an evangelical fighting a holy war or you're not, and that can give you a lot of stamina.
I think that's the crux of that Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz interview that went viral, right? Because that was Ted Cruz's play as well, right? Talking about defending Israel in a biblical context. And I think, I mean, America doesn't seem great at learning from its mistakes, but I would assume that for a lot of people, the Iraq war is recent enough that, I mean, if you're opposed to a war in Iran, like the branding for you could not be better because it's literally one letter different from Iraq. It's like, so I said a moment ago, is apples and oranges when it comes to the leadership. But in terms of the public imagination and the popular imagination of what would be involved, it is so easy for an American to imagine what a war in Iran would be like because they went through it 20 years ago in the same part of the world with the same mysterious religions that were running the countries. And there's only one letter difference. So that gives me hope.
Well, at least a lot of Americans understand the difference between Sunni and Shia and Farsi and Arabic. So that you can always, just as a kind of thing to keep in your back pocket.
Right.
Like a mnemonic.
Yeah.
If you get confused.
Yeah.
So
having said all that, the discourse is extremely stupid. Sorry, I should have led with that. Yes.
Oh yeah, right. Don't let that. If you're going to educate the young, you have to like land the lesson. And the question was it as stupid? Was it as stupid? But it was
stupid in a different way. I think is the crucial. I mean, it was stupid in a very different way. But yes, it was stupid.
But you know what? Okay, I'm going to try to be like, maybe it wasn't stupid because you did manage to write a lot. Like it would be very, very hard to get. I don't know, you can tell me in terms of panels, but it seems like it would be very hard to get even 10 panels out of Trump's recent decision, at least, to bomb Iran, in the sense that it's impetuous, right? The Afghanistan or the war on terror had a lot of language around it and a lot of like, we learned what nation building is, chemical weapons, and then there was a mission accomplished moment. But like the cluster munitions, there was just a lot, it seemed, to think about. And now when you hear that Trump wanted something that looked good on Fox News, he didn't care about the isolationists. He'll totally change his mind about things and maybe stop. Maybe the arguments, for and against the war on terror at the time that you were writing Get Your War On were actually more sophisticated.
Well, all of that stuff had been gestating for years and years in right-wing think tanks, right?
Yeah.
And so there was the sort of highfalutin vocabulary and rhetoric that would cause like even centrist Democratic pundits and politicians to absolutely swoon when they heard when Paul Wolfowitz would come out or Doug Feith or whoever and talk about democratizing the Middle East and stuff. Like they love that because then they get the excitement of going to war and bombing the shit out of people, but they can tell themselves they're not moral monsters because they're actually doing it for the population's own good. Whereas there was like, say what you will about Cheney and Rumsfeld, like I think they're monsters, but they were principled monsters. Like this is something.
It was coherent.
They could go to a fancy dinner party and explain why they were doing it. Like no one in the Trump administration could go to a fancy dinner party and explain why he bombed. Or like he doesn't have an ideology. It's
noticed. Yeah. I mean, The Atlantic is still trying to say maybe that, nobody likes Trump's rationale or we don't even understand his impulsiveness, but they are going right back to, but this is still a good thing.
Which is exactly what a lot of center-left nerds like Michael Ignatieff did during the Iraq War, which is they said, well, they went about it all the wrong way and I would have preferred a different outcome, but they were right to do it.
Yeah.
They're so fixated on these fantasies of profound societal change through violence that they overlook the fact that you cannot separate the military action from the people who are designing it and executing it and justifying it and selling it. It's like they're, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, so again, I think that's why these situations are so different. Trump doesn't really have an ideology.
Mm-hmm.
The genius of American imperialism, I guess, is that two people as different as George W. Bush and Donald Trump can both do military actions in the Middle East that a lot of Americans get excited about, and that a lot of even Democrats will be like, well, I hate to split hairs, but it could have been done better. Like he should have asked for military authorization from Congress, but I'm glad he took bold, decisive action. I don't know. To me, that's like part of the big vibe of just stupidity and like, sometimes I think like, oh, right, nothing is going to change.
Yeah, there was some time recently where I guess it was in one of those articles about first the will he or won't he, about whether he was really an isolationist, really an America First person, really opposed to war. I mean, some of it was sounding almost like you can listen to Tucker Carlson and just think like, is he just like a pacifist? Like, what is this? He's a conscientious objector to all this. But then, of course, because Tucker Carlson also acts as though, or there's a sheen of coherence and principle to what he says, and there's just not for Trump. I think it'd be frustrating to redo Get Your War On because he's less smarmy than Bush and less of a hypocrite, and he just doesn't even paper language over the things he does. Like sometimes I'm like, I sort of miss mansplaining because Trump never splains. Like it just would be nice if they like, he just never gets on the mic to explain why anything is happening.
Right.
Know?
Yeah.
And obviously he's blown past Congress, but he like blows past at getting any kind of popular support for anything he does. So the language is left to writers at the center right, or whatever the Atlantic is, places to tell us elaborate reasoning that does seem, by the way, to track with the old forever wars.
Mm-hmm.
That ended 2 years ago, 3 years
yeah
ago?
Right. Yeah, I think a certain type of, thinking back to the War on Terror era, I think a lot of them really delighted or got off on the fact that they were trying to do, they weren't trying to do everything by the book, but a lot of the stuff they were trying to do by the book. Let's come up with a finely reasoned rationale where we have legal authority to torture people, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like kind of classic sociopathic debate club kids now getting to ply their trade in the service of empire or something.
Yep.
Trump, to his credit, I think is like, no one gives a shit about that. Like,
yeah.
I just want to like do what I want to do. Like, I want to be king. Who wouldn't want to be king? Like, it's the best gig. Why should I pay a bunch of? But on the other hand, I was just thinking when we were talking just a moment ago about the difference between the foreign policy between Trump and Bush, and I think I said, like, I don't think that there's like a foreign policy ideology really behind America First. It's just like whatever Trump wants to do. Where I think Trump administration has the equivalent of Rumsfeld and Cheney, these people who have been obsessed with an idea for decades and decades, is with immigration and Stephen Miller. I think Stephen Miller is the equivalent of a Rumsfeld or a Cheney or a Wolfowitz.
Yeah.
This is a dude who is obsessed and consumed with this threat, right?
Right.
Real or imagined, and is dedicated to finally, now he is in a position where he can execute all his lofty plans of throwing families into unmarked police vans and having them whisked away.
Yeah.
I think that's probably other than Trump's own need for power and desire for power, which again is not an ideology. That's just a selfish narcissist wanting what he should want based on his diagnosis.
Yeah.
I think it's with immigration is where the ideological stuff, that's the equivalent. Does that make sense? Like the equivalent to the Bush administration's foreign policy in terms of its intellectual quote unquote architecture, as rickety as it is. In the Trump administration is in the domestic sphere, and it's Stephen Miller and immigration.
Yeah, just he's got his white whale. I mean, very much like Rumsfeld, he was forged in the fire of the Duke lacrosse scandal.
Right. Yeah.
Right? He doesn't exactly have like the kind of chops that Rumsfeld had, but maybe that doesn't matter. Right. And he's like laser focused on this one thing. The other person who seems like he's filled with a lot of gibberish is JD Vance. And on the show, we've heard a lot about kind of his actual acuity as a very far right thinker. And that's anti-immigration, but it's like America for Americans, and Americans are defined as, the ones buried in the graveyard with ma'am, and pop pop. And
Right. He has his famous Scots-Irish ancestry that he's always talking about, right?
that's right. Exactly. I don't think Stephen Miller has that. I mean, I think Michael Wolff said he walks around and everybody considers him on the spectrum and just an oddball. But Paul Wolfowitz maybe was that in his day. Oh.
But there's something.
Yeah. He's your like, and your trading cards. You're a Stephen Miller person.
Yeah, right. Like, I'm happy to say I've never met any of these people in real life. I do know people who had familiar or social connections to Wolfowitz, or not Wolfowitz, but Rumsfeld and Cheney. And this person said, they were charming. Like, they were affable guys. They knew how the game was played. They came up in the system. This is 20th century American politics, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They had a bunch of different roles in a bunch of different administrations. Like Rumsfeld could be charming sometimes. He was a monster, but he, like Trump, he could be a charming monster. He had some pretty good quips. Stephen Miller, and I really wonder if it's as simple as just being pre and post online.
Yeah.
Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance, they're just they have this amazing anti-charisma. Like Ted Cruz.
They really do.
Trump is charismatic, a lot of the times. He can be goofy and amusing and charming. Those dudes could not be charming if their life depended on it. And we know that because J.D. Vance tried to be charming to become president and he was rejected. It's like all it takes is one weird moment in a donut shop and people are like, no, this guy can't be president.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of that is just a function of not literally being online trying to dunk on people on Twitter or whatever, but just that mode of combat or interaction with other people. There's just some, I would much, as long as he wasn't holding a hunting rifle, I would much rather hang out with Dick Cheney than Stephen Miller, because Stephen Miller just seems like a psychic vampire. You will,
You know okay, I want to talk about, in some ways, about the use of clip art in Get Your War On, and it's relevant to now. I promise I'm not just piano manning you. But but the way I want to bring that around is to talk about how there's such pervs, the guys in office right now. Like, if Stephen Miller, there's supposedly some three-way with his wife and Musk. Obviously, that's not what happened. But it's unbelievable that Musk taking Stephen Miller's wife with him to work at whatever is somehow there's some three-way involved there, because Musk has had that before with the Google, whatever, the Sergey Brin. I can't remember all this. Right.
Yeah.
And then, and we don't doubt that. And there've been, right, when you hear that, you're not like, oh, that could never happen. Where if you heard it about Dick Cheney, you'd be like, we're really trying here to make a perv in them. Because in those days, this is for our younger listeners, in those days, the pervs were us. They were straight. The people in office were straight. They were Christian. They were
really interesting.
Military, but they weren't like Matt Gaetz adopting a kid and then calling him his best friend and clearly and then trafficking women. And that's just one of them. Right?
That's really,
they shoot their dogs. They pose with shirtless guys and with tattoos and breast and boob jobs. And these things are I've said this before, but they would shock your typical, polyamorous lefty. All of these things are completely horrifying and shocking. And Donald Trump's treatment of women and treatment of would-be sexual partners. And just the one thing I always think about is Lindsey Graham, just Lady G got prostitutes, and somehow we're let's not kink shame. That's just what this closeted senator did. And we're so polite about not being these people are shocking. They're way beyond hustler level weirdness.
Yeah, that's
Jerry
true.
Falwell Jr., what the hell? Pool boy? Anyway, the point is, so how does this come back to the drawings in this book? So Matt Taibbi, and we'll talk about him later if you want, but in the introduction to Get Your War On, the complete collection, which I'm just going to plug again now because you can get it on Amazon, said that the reason you use this clip art was partly because we, as he said, are no longer furry Robert Crumb people anymore with huge identities and character, and each one of us so strange and eccentric. Even Gary Trudeau's characters, they're all different from each other, and we are more of these robotic characters that might as well be described as man with rolled up sleeves at telephone. white,
Uh-huh.
44. And that seemed really interesting, and that there's just not much to us except our demographic, and we're in cubicles and we're all the same. So I sort of thought, like, there's something about our eccentricities being squeezed out of us. And then also all these people, I pretty much should just open it because I don't know how to put a question mark at the end of this. But I think you get it, that it seems possible that that's not who we are anymore. Like in Taby's description of us Americans,
Right.
and you have black and white professionals in Get Your War On. There's no description of us as like, people who go crazy when they see someone else in a mask, or people who decide that, like, the virus is created by chemtrails, or like, we're really eccentric now. We're back to some kind of our crumb thing, our world, at least the right.
Yeah. I mean, all right. So
you're taking creatine,
right.
and you're probably square now. So
right.
I can't say that you're.
I mean, this is a crazy thing. Like, even I've always just thought of myself as like pretty normal. Like, even though I was making that crazy cartoon, it was like, but this is what a normal person should think about all this stuff. Like, this is crazy. I'm not weird. Like, Bush is weird, like Rumsfeld is weird. I'm trying to be normal. I mean, I used the clip art practically just because I had been making clip art cartoons at temp jobs for a while. And it was just like the toolbox I had available the night I decided to make some cartoons about bombing Afghanistan. And it just seemed like the quickest, simplest way to convey some stuff was just like have two guys on the phone talking to each other like I had been talking to my friends,
Right.
And I was doing a lot of temping at the time, so I was very familiar with like phones and computers and stuff and just bullshitting at the office. I think that's why I chose that clip art. And then also just like the surprise that when you look at it, it looks really boring. And then when you start reading it, it's like, oh, it's like pretty intense, what these guys are talking about. And the thing you said is so interesting about like who's the freak these days. I mean, there were freaks back. We shouldn't forget about people like Dennis Hastert, who were actual weirdo predator freaks. The difference was, unlike Matt Gaetz, and Trump is obviously the avatar of this, depravity was not a social currency among the right the way it is now. Right. I think that's what you're talking about, right? It kind of flip-flopped. Mm-hmm. That for a lot of the post-Cold War era, the left and the counterculture were the freaks and weirdos, and they used that as a social currency to kind of needle the squares, like the Cheneys and Rumsfelds, the Cold Warriors who wore suits even when they probably didn't have to. And then there was a big switch because Trump is such a fundamentally subversive and depraved person. He is truly, it's just like so Shakespearean, like he is so anti-establishment because he craves nothing more than to be embraced by the establishment and the approval. He's one of these people who's doomed because he seeks approval from people who will never give it to him. And the more he seeks their approval, the more they're disgusted by him.
Yeah.
So he's fucked, and I think because he's such a lunatic, he has made kind of this sort of countercultural depravity, that's something the right specializes in now, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like you don't see AOC or Zoran Mandani coming out being all freaky and crazy and talking about,
I so wanted it to surface sometime that Hillary Clinton had a on and off thing with a Chippendales dancer. I just because that learning about Stormy Daniels, right, which is like blown past. But then there are just people like Hillary Clinton walking around and just thinking to herself, like, how is this even possible? That he's like the day that she was just like studying her homework on healthcare, he was just like, balancing Stormy Daniels against that other Playboy bunny and trying to figure out, where he was going to go. Anyway, yes, you're right. And the left seems like pretty squeaky clean. Mamdani, doesn't seem to have any flies on him.
I mean, it's just like Obama, like he can't afford to, because a white dude having a fly on him, it's like deal breaker for a lot of voters, to be better than perfect.
Yeah, there is something actually, I never read this argument again, but it was like someone's Twitter thread. I don't know who to attribute it to, but it was like with Trump and Obama, the idea was that like it was about meritlessness. So that like Trump's meritlessness. So it's like the worst of us can beat the best of you, with Trump trouncing Obama at some point.
Yeah.
And, look how hard he works and what a tryhard he is. And I can like with the back of my hand do this while also sleeping around, while also just contradicting myself right and left and behaving psychopathically like he always does.
It's like the exact opposite. You remember that speaking of another war on terror luminary, Condoleezza Rice. She was President Bush's, what was she, like national security advisor? And then I think she was Secretary of State for a while.
Yes, Secretary of State.
Anyway, for the youth who are listening to this, she was African American, and she was an extremely accomplished classical pianist, which conservatives loved because she was one of the good ones.
Right.
Because she was excelling at a very traditionally white upper class art form, classical piano. And there's a famous story that Condoleezza Rice at some point was playing piano and there was some dealing with some racist guy or something. And she was like, look at me, I can do your culture. I'm better at your culture than you are. Right. And that's almost like the weird inverse of whatever Trump is doing with Obama, which is like, look at me, I can be the biggest piece of shit ever and still get elected twice, just like you did. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a weird sort of anti-accomplishment type of thing. That's very appealing. Like, I understand that. Like, we all want to be huge assholes and bums who just stumble from one success to another. You know what I mean? Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Yeah. It's like it's like 90% of the heroes in American movies are that character. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. It's the right's love of IQs instead of like GPAs. Like, I was just thinking, like, a GPA is like this thing that Hillary works at, but right. And IQ is inherent, and if you don't have it, it's pointless. It's just like you have it or you don't. Yeah. And the wonderful coincidence is that we have found that white people have higher IQs than black people. So what are you going to do? That's why we got to throw everybody in these vans and get them out of the country or whatever. That's it. They finally found an accurate test that measures like actual just supremacy. And it's so good about it. Totally. That and the shape of your skull or whatever. So where's Gen X? Where's your generation, our generation in this? I know you said you sometimes feel like a boomer, but in like vis-a-vis Trump right now. Like, I like this one thing you said about no kings, which is like young people don't really like protesting Trump. Like, they weren't really showing up. I did a lot of Tesla takedown things. I thought like maybe they'd, have it in for Elon Musk. And the protests were great, but they were old people in New York, right. And then the No Kings people showed up, and you said this amazing thing on your podcast, which is people are ready to protest ICE. The fuck ICE signs were much better than the like orange Cheeto signs about Trump. They didn't really care about the Kings theme. They really, really cared about the ICE issue. And I think part of that, I mean, full disclosure, this is based on me spending 45 minutes at one protest. Like, that is hardcore shoe leather reporting. I haven't read any like polling or like real analysis of it, but my sense of it, based on my perspective on how I think the world works, is like what we were talking about. Like, it's not cool to protest Trump because Trump is anti-establishment and the establishment obviously sucks. So why would you want to do what your Elizabeth Warren voting grandmother is doing and go protest Trump? ICE, on the other hand, is just an incredibly accurate visual representation of the apparatus of the state and the system, which is masked men with huge guns throwing helpless people into vans and driving off into the night. Yeah. And I think that's a much more sinister target than Trump. And protesting ICE has that, now I'm going to sound like a real boomer, has that kind of frisson of anti-establishment protest in a way that being like, Orange man bad. Like, we've been hearing that for fucking 40 years now. It's like, it doesn't work, But this is one of the reasons I'm excited about New York City's, presumed next mayor, is that he's young and he is building a broad coalition that involves a lot of young people. And he is angering and terrifying like a lot of hedge fund lunatics who nobody likes, Yep. They're the puppet masters behind any establishment that you care to criticize. And I mean, this is just a long-winded way of saying like we need young left-wing and progressive politicians. You know what I mean? I mean, the idea that he's 33 and that there's like life ahead of him, Yeah, right. Yeah, he's not like us looking back on life and being like, exactly. Memories, war on terror, Operation Enduring Freedom. Like, he was born in 1991. It's just fantastic. And like, he just begins to suggest that there is a future. And, when he says like, no bus fare, affordable housing, free childcare, just like dare to dream. What if we man, YOLO. I mean, why not? It's like,
Trump said he was going to build a huge wall and Mexico was going to pay for it. Like, say whatever you want. Like,
So totally say whatever you want.
yeah, it's
Right.
Yeah.
And who can be like, I mean, who wants to say back to him, like, the data show that you can't really do
Right.
free bus something because of something? It's a feasibility question. These guys are dreamers. I mean,
Right.
it's hardly like an Age of Aquarius thing to suggest, affordable housing, right? Like, where
Right.
it's not,
Yeah.
he's not a crazy hippie. At the same time, it's like you said, it seems normal. It seems like Zoran's someone that you would actually be like kind of happy to run into and like have an actual regular conversation with. It just feels normal. It feels like sanity, just.
Yeah, right. And then you compare his victory to, speaking of like the yang to his yin, Stephen Miller's unhinged tweet about it,
Yeah.
Like that's it in a nutshell. And as distressed as I am about the state of the world and the state of this country, if younger Americans see two futures and one of them is represented by Mamdani and the other is represented by Stephen Miller, I kind of think like, oh, maybe we'll be okay. Because I can't imagine, maybe this is my liberal bias or whatever, I can't imagine the person who would rather hang out with Stephen Miller than Mamdani. But maybe that's just me. You know what I mean?
I think that's true across the political spectrum. It is also like really, I'm really glad that people are scared of Mamdani. Like, I'm just like, I mean, look to
right,
them,
and that's
right.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but like, and that gets to what we're talking about in terms of the cultural currency of being anti-establishment. It's like that every time a billionaire tweets out or makes an announcement that they're scared of Mamdani and he's going to destroy everything we've built and we need a secret plan. It's like, yeah, keep saying that. Like, that's good.
Right,
People like
exactly.
that makes Mamdani sound sexy. Dangerous men are sexy in America,
Totally.
Like,
right.
That works.
And also he's a socialist, so you don't even need to say like,
right.
He's got some secret socialism in him. He's got it in his bio,
right, exactly.
Right?
I mean that's like that's the lesson that the Democrats just like to take them 2,000 years to learn, which is like, just say what you believe and say it with your chest and people will follow. You don't have,
Yeah.
People real people. Anyway,
I know you have to go because you've got other podcasts, your own.
Yeah,
podcast
very important
to do today.
podcast stuff to do.
Very important podcast because having a podcast is the real way to fight back, as we know.
Yeah,
like if this is real Operation Enduring Freedom. What do you think? What do you think your characters in Get Your War On would be doing today? Because in spite of myself, because I just want everyone to read it and understand it. We'll put up a couple panels from it, but. They're really aggressive. They are like just irreverent or there's something more than that. They're like desecrating everything that is good in the world in their descriptions of like, well, let's say we do drop cluster munitions or drop, I'll do it wrong, but they drop food down on people that we've just blown up. Like, how are they going to eat without their arms? And then the other guy's basically like, fuck yeah.
Right.
So what are they doing now? Like, I don't know if you have names for them.
Oh, well, I'm sure at least one of them is now a registered Trump voter because that's just what happened demographically as people got older, right?
Yep.
But I would imagine, I don't know, it's again, like as many similarities as there are between Iraq and Iran and these military interventions, American culture is just in a completely different place than it was right after 9/11. Not a completely different place. It's not like we all became, peace-loving socialists or something. But I do think people have asked me over the years, and especially last week, like, when are you going to bring back that cartoon? You should start making that cartoon again. There's about to be another war in the Middle East. It's like that cartoon was just very much of its moment. And actually, I did it for years longer than I should have anyway, just because it was a steady paycheck.
Strong disagree. Forever comic.
It really was Operation Enduring Comic. It really hit the hardest in those few weeks right after 9/11 because there just wasn't a lot of dissent in pop culture, and the mood, especially in New York, was just like so intense after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very cathartic thing to make that comic and use that type of language and just say and try to express what I was feeling. So
or what you
like it wouldn't work now.
Feeling just, right because it wasn't. That? What you weren't feeling. Nobody in the cartoon. This is like it's just. There's no other word for it but irony, right? Like the voices of you weren't expressing what you were feeling in the sense that you weren't writing a pacifist tract. You were expressing.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I get.
Satirizing the case for the war in the most like awesome bloodthirsty terms. And I also want to say it was absolutely shocking to the point of being incomprehensible to me in New York after 9/11 that someone would let themselves say these things, because I felt vengeful, like just emotionally, right? Obviously, my impulse was, you don't go kill people, but there were like, smell of death in the air, right?
Yeah. It was all over our back patio, like all the debris and stuff. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I think in that, I grew up in the church and I used to be extremely religious. I'm not religious now, but I think in those days after 9/11, like I had a real deep conversation with myself about the church I had grown up in and the ideal of the Prince of Peace. I mean, it sounds very pretentious, but I was really like, but this is everything that I learned in church. Is like the moment you're the most upset and the most angry is like when you have to back off.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if someone else was going to lead the war on terror, I would have been less skeptical of it. But it was just something looking at George W. Bush and being like, this dude is not the one. Like, he's not the guy.
It was amazing foresight, because everyone we know now says they were against the war.
Yeah, right. Like Trump.
Right?
Trump says
Trump
wasn't a pro. Yeah.
Including Trump, but you have this this thick document that at least lets the world know that you were against it from day one. I don't think you entertained that vengeful spirit that I had for even a week. I know we got to go. I have to tell you a thing about you. You were the first person to ever Rick roll me.
Really?
Amazing, right? It's so crazy, and it's too much for listeners to care about. But we did this thing together at New York Magazine. I think it was like a dialogue about something. And
it was about Bill Wassick's. Was it about Bill Wassick's book? He had written a book about internet culture or something.
Maybe that's right.
And we did like one of those like online conversation things, right?
Like where we just typed in. I mean,
yeah.
But maybe there was a recording of something, and you said, hey, you guys should all look at this because we are mentioned at like 426 time signature.
And it was like, never gonna.
I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to hear this. And so I went to 426 because it was about us.
Right.
And I literally put in whatever the chat, AOL Messenger, whatever it was at the time, I put, David, I don't get it, because what came up was this old MTV video of a guy singing "Never Gonna Give You Up." So it must have been wrong about what it was.
You didn't even realize you had been Rickrolled.
I didn't know what a Rickroll was. And there was like dead silence in that thread. And I've been scared of you ever since. So never send me
That's a real feather in my cap. Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I really remember explaining like, oh, no, this must have been an error because this video got in there. Anyway.
I probably assumed you were like reverse meta Rickrolling me or something. And I just didn't want to take the bait, so I shut down or something.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's amazing.
I told you then.
No,
All right. David, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, take care.
Take care, guys.
Wet Rough Beast was created by me, Virginia Heffernan, and Stephen Metcalf. Richard Stanislaw and Brianna Snyder produced the show. John Jeremiah Sullivan recorded our theme song, Je dis que je pense et je vis comme je veux, which was originally written and recorded by the French pop star Antoine. Merci beaucoup, Antoine. Subscribe to our show at whatroughbeastpod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Virginia Heffernan. On behalf of Stephen Metcalf, Richard Stanislaw, Brianna Snyder, and the whole What Rough Beast team, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time on What Rough Beast. Awesome.